Johnny Talk Sports in with my Week 12 NFL picks. Last week I went 11-4, one of my best weeks of the year, and that is a week that I really needed. Puts me at 104 and 60 and 1 on the year so far, and I am hoping that I can repeat last week's success this week as well. We've got big games this week. We've got 3 games on Thanksgiving Day. So without further ado, let's get into my Week 12 NFL predictions. Kicking things off with the Bears and the Lions. Now, I need to be honest here. Is there anybody that isn't a fan of the Bears or the Lions that has any interest in this game whatsoever or is enthused about it? Because I feel like unless you're a fan of the Bears or the Lions, or maybe if you have a fantasy player in this game, then this game suits no interest to you at all. Because I don't anticipate many points being scored in this game. Because it's quite possible we're going to have Andy Dalton for the Bears and Tim Boyle for the Lions. And of course, now that I'm saying this, it's going to end up being one of the best games of the year. It's going to end up going into overtime. Maybe it'll end up as a draw. But it's unknown if it's going to be Justin Fields or Andy Dalton for the Bears this week. Although I would lean it towards being Andy Dalton. I will be surprised if it's Justin Fields this week. But either way, no matter who it is between Justin Fields or Andy Dalton, I just think the Bears, they are a disappointment this season. I just think that they're good enough to win this game against a winless Lions team. We have seen the Lions fight in a lot of games this season, but they just can't seem to get that win. But I will say this, if there was any week for the Lions to get their first win of the year, first win under new head coach Dan Campbell, it would be this week. But I'm going to go with the Bears. I don't think there's going to be many points scored in this game. I think we're going to see a score in the neighborhood of maybe 20-14. But I think the Bears win. Next, Las Vegas and Dallas. And I was unsure who to pick in this game because Las Vegas, they had a strong start to the year despite facing distraction after distraction, but these last 2 weeks have just looked abysmal. And the last thing you want when you look abysmal in your last 2 games is to face an offense like the Cowboys. However, if there was a time in the year to face the Cowboys, it would be this week because the Cowboys are going to be down Amari Cooper. I am 100% certain they'll be down CeeDee Lamb because he won't clear concussion protocol in time. I don't care what anyone says. CeeDee Lamb isn't playing. And Tyron Smith as well. Although it is optimistic Tyron Smith will play, but I just can't see it. I would lean towards him being out. Plus, Ezekiel Elliott is banged up. And if Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are going to be out, which they will be, the Cowboys would heavily rely on Zeke Elliott, although he is banged up. So it's unknown if Tony Pollard is going to get a lot more carries and a lot more touches in this game. And despite the Raiders looking abysmal in their last 2 games, I just think that the timing is just perfect for the Raiders here. Because they are known to have a downhill season the second half of the year. However, I just think with all these injuries and all these players being banged up, I just don't like the Cowboys' chances in this game. So I'm going to go with the Raiders. I think they take full advantage of the injuries the Cowboys have. I think the Raiders are going to have they're going to have an easy time getting to Dak. Dak's going to have a hard time because I think he's going to face a lot of pressure from this Raiders defense, and I think they pick up the win. Moving on to the primetime game for Thanksgiving Day, the Bills and the Saints. Teams that need to get back on the winning track because the Patriots just took the lead in the AFC East over the Bills and the Saints. The NFC South is getting away from them because the Buccaneers, it's only a matter of time until they start winning game after game after game. So they got to get moving. And they're down to Trevor Siemian at quarterback. They just allowed 240 plus rushing yards on the Eagles last week. But I'm looking at the Bills more in this matchup because Josh Allen and the Bills, they had high expectations coming into the year, and their last 3 games completely shut down by the Jaguars, shut down by the Colts, and then the week before last week, they dominated the Jets. Although it's the Jets, and it's really nothing that impressive because you're expected to dominate the Jets. But there's no time to panic for the Bills. I know there are some people out there that say the Bills are a fraud, but it's honestly any given Sunday, and I think every team really looks bad at least 2 or 3 times throughout the NFL season. But I think the Bills, they get back on the right track. A big matchup, though, I am watching throughout this game. Stephon Diggs against Marshawn Lattimore. That's going to be a big matchup within the matchup. And what kind of game will this be? Will it be a run-heavy game by the Bills? Knowing that the Eagles, they just put up 240-plus rushing yards against the Saints, who had the top rushing defense in the NFL until that game last week. And for the Saints, it is expected that Alvin Kamara will be back in the Saints lineup this week. I would anticipate him returning. But I'm going to go with the Bills in this one because I just think that it's only a matter of time until we see the Bills offense look like one of the best ones in the league. Plus, we saw flashes of that earlier on the season when they were dominant against the Chiefs. Even though the Chiefs' defense struggled throughout the beginning of the year, but Kansas City's defense is getting better by the week. So I'm going to go with Buffalo. Moving on to the Sunday games now, the Steelers and the Bengals. And the Bengals, they are a night and day type of team because one week we think of the Bengals as contenders, and then the next week they are losing to the Jets. For the Steelers, however, they've been missing some key pieces on defense. They missed some key pieces on defense last week against the Chargers. A heartbreaking loss, although that was one of the best games of the year. And I think by the time this is all said and done, that game on Sunday night will probably be one of the top 10 games of the season. I think the ending was that good. But if the Steelers, they can get back some missing pieces from that defense, then I think the Steelers will win this one. Because I would argue that if there were some pieces available in that game last week against the Chargers, the Steelers would have won. So I'm going to go with the Steelers to pull off the upset this week against the Bengals and make the AFC North race a lot more competitive. Next, Tampa Bay and Indianapolis, and what a game by Jonathan Taylor last week. 5 total touchdowns against the top defense statistically in the NFL. Well, the Buccaneers, well, they got their first win in almost a month last week against the Giants, but it was against the Giants. And I am going to say in this game, if Jonathan Taylor, if he has a repeat performance of last week in this game, give him the MVP already. I know the MVP is more of a quarterback award, but at this point, Jonathan Taylor deserves the MVP. And I am going to pick the upset here. I think the Colts, I think they're going to pull off the upset against Tampa Bay because this is reminding me a lot of last year. The Buccaneers, they had high expectations coming into the year. Everyone thought they were going to the Super Bowl, and then they started losing a couple games early on. And then the game after Thanksgiving, they ended up losing. But they continued to win games and eventually hoisted the Lombardi Trophy. And let's honestly say that history does indeed repeat itself. The Colts pull off the upset. That is honestly my lock of the week. I think Jonathan Taylor, I think that the Colts are going to move the ball really well on this Patriots defense, believe it or not. Because the Colts are a much different animal than the Giants. Plus, Saquon Barkley was playing his first game coming off of an injury. Carolina and Miami. And this is a tough one to pick as well. Because the Panthers, they had a strong start to the year, but then they went up against legitimate contenders, some of the better teams, and they started losing games. Well, the Dolphins, they won their opener against New England. Then they went on a massive losing streak. And then we kind of saw some flashes of the Miami defense. They contained Lamar Jackson really well. Because Lamar Jackson, he looked flustered and frustrated all game long. And whatever game plan the Dolphins had going against the Ravens a couple weeks ago, dial up that same game plan and you'll win. And in fact, I'm going to say the Dolphins will win this game. I think that this game is going to go in either direction. This isn't going to be a Myles Gaskin day, I don't think, because it is an even week, and Myles Gaskin doesn't do well on even weeks for some reason. But I think the Dolphins, I think they're still going to win. Because the Panthers, they may have come close to the Washington football team last week, but the Washington football team is statistically one of, if not the worst defenses in the NFL. And that is kind of shocking considering that their defense really carried them last season. So I'm going to go with Miami because I just think that they are back. I think they're going to come back on the winning track here. Moving on to Tennessee and New England, and the Titans last week losing to the Texans. But isn't this what we know the Titans as anyway? A team that is going to look bad and lose against the worst teams in the league, as they have now lost to the Jets and the Texans. But they beat the strong teams like the Rams and the Chiefs, and even the Seahawks, I'd say, are still a pretty strong team, despite them struggling this season. And the Patriots, they have one of the best defenses in the NFL, an elite defense. But this game is going to be low scoring. I will be shocked if we see an offensive shootout in this game, because both defenses are going to rise to the occasion. The Titans defense didn't look that good at all at the beginning of the year, but they're getting better week after week. And by a low score of 17-14 with a game-winning field goal from 41 yards out, I am going with the Titans in this game. Because this is what we know the Titans as. They beat the strong teams, but they lose to the weak ones. Eagles and the Giants now. The Eagles, I am getting a sense that they're going to go on a hot streak to end the year. Because I just think in these last couple of games, I think Nick Sirianni has finally learned what is going to happen when the Eagles run the football and pound the rock. They're going to move the ball at will on defenses. They're going to continue to win games if they keep running the ball. While the Giants, Saquon Barkley will be playing in his second game since returning from injury. Barkley didn't really get as many touches in the game on Monday night last week against the Buccaneers, but I anticipate he gets more touches in this game. Plus the Eagles defense. I've been saying it all year long. I'm going to say it at least one more time. One of the most underrated defenses in the league. A complete night and day kind of defense. And which defense shows up? If the defense where they look like a top 5 defense in the NFL, if that's the defense that shows up, it is going to be a long afternoon for the Giants. And in fact, I think it will be. I'm going to go with the Eagles to win this game, and I'm sensing the Eagles, they're going on a hot streak to end this season. we've got a couple of those I have to pick somebody to win games coming up, and this is one of those games. The Falcons and the Jaguars. And I do not want to pick a winner for this game at all. I just don't. But I will go with the Falcons solely based off of they have had the more rest as they played last week on Thursday night. Plus, they may have gotten shut out last week against the Patriots, but their defense really kept them in that for the majority of that game. Matt Ryan throwing 2 interceptions in that game, honestly being a huge difference in that game, as their defense can only do so much. But I'm going to go with Atlanta here just based on the fact that they're the more rested team. I know the Jaguars beat the Bills, but I just have to pick somebody. And I mean, that's the Jaguars, really. That's their known thing of the year is they beat the Bills. But I'm going with Atlanta anyways. I just don't know who to pick here. I mean, the second one of those games coming up, the Jets and the Texans, and honestly, I don't know who to pick here either. I don't want to pick anybody, but I'm going to go with the Texans because they beat Tennessee last week, and I think that is a confidence boost moving forward for them. It's literally just for that simple reason, because these are just two of the worst teams in the league, but somehow both these teams beat the Titans, and the Jets, they somehow beat the Bengals as well. Plus, it's anticipated that Zach Wilson is returning this week as the Jets starting QB, although it's probably in their best interest to go with Joe Flacco at this point in the year. But either way, I'm picking the Texans. Moving on to the Chargers and the Broncos, and this is going to be a close game from start to finish. This one will come down to the wire. The Broncos are coming off of their bye week, while the Chargers, they're coming off of a huge Sunday Night Football win over the Steelers in what was, I think, one of the best games of the year so far. While Justin Herbert has been struggling a little bit for the Chargers in the weeks leading up to the win against the Steelers, I just think he's going to have a much better end to the year. I think he got those bad performances out of the way, as there was some criticism that I've seen throughout social media on Justin Herbert. But I think he's going to silence the doubters once again this week, as the Chargers will pick up the win. Next, we have what is, without a doubt, the game of the week, the Rams and Packers. And just by looking at this game, you would think this game is going to go back and forth all game long. It's going to be an offensive showdown, and whoever has the ball last is going to win. Not so fast. Aaron Rodgers does not do good. He doesn't do well against good defenses. And the Rams, they have a good defense. Even though it doesn't look as good as last year, they still have the most talented defense in the NFL. Plus the Packers, they're dealing with injuries. David Bakhtiari is injured. Even though he was injured in the playoff game last year where the Packers dominated against the Rams didn't have Matthew Stafford or Von Miller in that game. And adding those two, I think, to your roster will provide a huge difference this time around than it did last year. Plus, Jair Alexander is still injured. Allen Lazard, injured. So the Packers, they have some injuries piling up. And I think the Rams, with Aaron Rodgers not having a good history against good defenses, I think the Rams, they win by double digits. At least a 10-point victory for the Rams. I just think the Rams, with them coming off the bye week, them struggling in their last two games offensively, with them struggling last two games, period, they took advantage of the bye week. They got rejuvenated. And I think we're going to see the Rams, I think we're going to see them look like the contenders, like we expected them to be in the beginning of the year and as soon as they made the trade for Von Miller. Next, we have the Vikings and the 49ers. The Niners, they have a bit of a winning streak going. Well, the Vikings, they picked up a big win against the Packers last week. Perhaps confidence moving forward. Although I will say, I am impressed with Kirk Cousins this season. Playing clean football. Only 2 interceptions this season for Kirk Cousins. While for the 49ers, in the 3 games that George Kittle has played since coming off the IR, a touchdown in each of those 3 games. And Deebo Samuel, second in the NFL in receiving yards, only behind Cooper Kupp. So this game, I am confident in saying this game is going to be an offensive battle. These 2 teams will go at it back and forth, back and forth. And it's going to come down to who I think has the ball last, and I think that will be the Vikings. I think it's going to be the Vikings in a 4-minute offense. They're just going to hand the ball off to Dalvin Cook, have him run the clock out, and the Vikings pick up a win. Browns, Ravens, Sunday Night Football, and when these teams faced off last year in primetime, it was in the high 40s. And I don't think it's going to be in the high 40s this time. I think this game will simply come down to which team runs the football the best, because both of these teams are in the top 3 in rushing offense in the entire NFL. And the Browns, they have been living and dying off the running game for the last year and a half. And the running game will carry the Browns more than ever because Baker Mayfield is banged up right now. He has so many injuries. He is going to need bubble wrap. And the Ravens, Lamar Jackson will be back this week after missing last week with an illness, but it wasn't the illness that we are all familiar with in this last year and a half. So I will be surprised if we get a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be in the 28 to 24 range, but I'm going to pick the Ravens in this matchup. I just feel like the Ravens are the Browns' kryptonite because the Ravens, they swept the Browns last year, and I think the Ravens will beat the Browns once again. Because if it has to come down to Baker Mayfield making a play, I just can't see him being clutch in this game. Despite the Ravens not having a good defense, at least this season, I just think the Ravens offense will be good enough to win this game. Week number 12 wraps up with Monday Night Football, Seattle and Washington. And I expect a lot of yards gained and a lot of points on the scoreboard because both of these defenses, they have not been good all year from a stat standpoint. And the reason why I say that is because Washington's defense, we have seen some flashes of Washington's defense of last year. But I still expect an offensive showdown in this game. I think this might come down to which defense can you rely on more in this game, and that is, without a doubt, Washington's, because Washington's defense was one of the best defenses last year, and their defense hasn't been good for most of the year, but there has been a couple of games where their defense, they have been creating turnovers. They stepped up when it mattered most. While Seattle's defense, it has not been good at all since the Legion of Boom. There were points last year in the season where Seattle's defense, it looked a bit improved compared to the beginning, but I just trust Washington's defense more in this matchup, so I'm going to go with the football team. So those are my Week 12 NFL picks for review. I have the Bears, Raiders, Bills, Steelers, Colts, Dolphins, Titans, Eagles, Falcons, Texans, Chargers, Rams, Vikings, Ravens, and Washington all winning this week. Like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Have a great Thanksgiving. Until next time.